to the Paper Snob. This is Tara. Today I'm working on Scraplift Crafternoon, and this week we are scraplifting Cassandra over at Crazy Craft Obsessions. I'll have her links to her social media listed below. She created a beautiful layout using Vicki Boutin's Bright and Bold, Bold and Bright. Not sure which it is. I have not cut into mine yet, and I'm not going to be cutting into it today. I pulled some product from Hip Kit and Simple Stories. These items happened to be in one of my counterfeit kits this past year, within the last 3 or 4 months, and I want to use up a little bit more of this product. I have been saving this sheet here for fussy cutting purposes, which is kind of fun. So I'm going to pause. We're going to get started. Here are my ink choices. I did pull out the Distress inks as she suggests in her video. I will link her video below, as well as her YouTube channel and Instagram account. But let's get started. So I started out cutting this out exactly the way that it shows, with the little notches and everything. And I know that you can't see real well here because I've got it very close to the camera, but you can kind of see what I mean. I cut them out exactly the way they are seen as they are, thinking that I would probably use the notched version. But then I realized that I wanted, of course, to make squares and that the notches weren't going to be on both sides if I cut part of it into a square. So I ended up just cutting them down into roughly 2-inch squares. Some of them were a little wider or a little longer depending on how I oriented them on the final page. But, you know, here I'm just kind of cutting the notches and everything. These are really cute little ticket tags. I love the mixed media look on them. They really reminded me of the square paper that Cassandra used for her layout from Vicki Boutin's collection. But this is something that I've been kind of saving to fussy cut for a while and just hadn't done it yet. And so I thought now was the time to bring it out and use up this beautiful piece of paper. I think the other reason I hadn't fussy cut it yet is the other side is a gorgeous mixed media text background. And I was trying to make sure that I didn't want to use that side as well, or instead. Because, you know, cutting apart means I'm not going to have any of the text except for these little tiny strips. And you guys can gasp if you want. I throw those strips away. I am not keeping those little tiny pieces of paper in my stash. I used to save everything, and if I'm working with a specific collection, I will save all of the scraps until I've finished with all of the paper, and then I will try to use up scraps that are usable, but in my opinion, those aren't really something that I would save to use, except for maybe the longer borders, but I just tossed it all. I even tossed the branding strip, and I do sometimes keep branding strips. I have a little Pringles can that I decorated. I believe it was Ginger Bush over at Ginger's Corner who shared that she had a can decorated like that. And I copied it because it's a great idea and a good place to hold branding strips that you're keeping, but I don't keep all of my branding strips. I just typically keep the ones that I know that I'm going to find a use for eventually. So as you can see, I've skipped to the point of just cutting out the rectangles and not cutting those notches anymore, because when I cut it down, I'm going to cut off those ends. And then when I get the final wreath built with it, I'm going to draw in the other lines with a black pen. I actually think it's navy blue on this pattern paper, but the black was close enough, and I didn't use a real heavy hand, so I don't think you can tell the difference unless you get out a magnifying glass, and more power to you if you're going to do that, because that's just too much work. So I'm about done here with cutting these apart. It doesn't take that long. It's just, you know, at first when I was trying to cut all those notches, it was a little bit tedious, but after I decided, you know, you're not going to use the notched part, you might as well just cut. it went really quickly. All right, I went ahead and skipped ahead. I figured you didn't need to watch me cut all of those down into the single tickets. So now I'm doing just like I said I was going to do. I am cutting each one of those down to about a 2 by 2 inch square. Some of them I leave a little longer, and some they're just under, but they're about 2 inches. One of my goals, like for this particular tag, was to make sure that I got the tab on there. I'm not sure it mattered in the end. I think I ended up covering it, but there's 2 of those, so maybe I got one of them. It doesn't really matter. But this is just a really easy thing to do, just using my little trimmer to cut them down, and then I'll start setting up for building that little wreath. Alright, now I'm ready to start working on building the little wreath. I brought in the pattern paper that I was going to use, and I'm going to first just kind of start gluing these together. I do have Cassandra's layout open up on my desktop, which is across the room, so it's not super close, but it's close enough that I can kind of see how she laid hers out. And if you watched her video, she did glue this part of hers too before gluing and doing the inking on the background. I chose a pattern paper for my background because it was another sheet from the same collection from Hip Kit, and I've been trying to use up the things that I pull for my counterfeit kits, and rather than just putting them back. And because this particular kit I pulled apart, I don't have the baggie for it anymore, and I'm just not making room. I'm trying to make room on my Calyx shelf for other product, so these are sitting in a iris container that I keep underneath my desk, full of bits and pieces from various counterfeit kits. I will put things away like stamps and stencils and alphas that are easy to put away, but a lot of times the papers and things, especially if they came from a kit or a paper pad, I will just leave them in the box until the box gets too full. But my goal right now is to kind of try to use these all up, and I'm just kind of tacking this together at this point. It's not perfect, and as you can see, in places I didn't get quite enough glue, so I have to re-glue, but I'm not wanting to put a whole lot of glue on there just yet. I will eventually get enough glue on it, but this is just kind of a way to tack it so that I can see how my photo is going to fit and then get the inking done on that background. So I'm pretty happy with the way that little square wreath looks. It's not as perfectly rounded as hers is, but it's good enough in my opinion. And I am using several different colors of distress ink. If you watch her video, she explains why she uses distress ink, and I just kind of followed along. As you can see, I keep the little foam rounds underneath each of my ink pads, and yes, each one has their own round, so that way I don't worry about getting ink from another pad onto the same one. You can still blend easily. There's no cross contamination with the colors from the blending either, at least not that I have found. So that one was abandoned coral, and I believe this one is wilted lilac. And I decided I needed a little bit more across the top because this color here is pretty predominant in my squares. I don't have as many. She has her squares separated by color, and she was able to kind of mix the colors according to her squares, and my colors are more mixed up on my squares. They're not just one square with one color, at least not all of them. This one is Kish Flamingo. It is one of my favorite inks in this Distress and the Distress Oxide pads. I really love that pink. This is Mode Lawn, and it's a beautiful green, as you can see, and I use quite a bit of it trying to get enough of the color on there. And I loved how, as I was inking with this, some of the pattern on the pattern paper wasn't covered up by my ink. It was almost as if the paper itself had like embossing or splatters on it, and the inking that I was doing wasn't covering up that. Like you can see there's some white specks on there. Believe me, I did run my ink pad over those areas, but for whatever reason it didn't cover it, and I think that's really cool. And it looks really cool in person as well. It looks like I added white splatters, which I didn't do. I considered it, but I didn't do it. So I'm pretty happy with the inking, and I'm going to add a little bit more of that abandoned coral up there in that corner, because I had a corner that didn't have coverage, and I wanted to make sure that the ink was covered on either side of my wreath. The middle part doesn't matter as much because that is where my photos and stuff are going. And now I'm gonna just glue this together. I actually considered popping it up on foam adhesive, decided not to do that, just gonna glue it down. I love how that inking just makes everything pop. Oh, and I lied, I did add white splatters, how funny. So I'm adding white splatters, I lied to you. I'm just kind of adding to what's already on the paper, and it looks really great. So this is what I get for creating a layout and not editing the video for a couple of days. I forget what I did, and I know Kristen's always telling me I have to do it immediately or I forget what I did, and sometimes I do, and well, this time I forgot. Anyway, no harm done. I'm just adding a little bit of splatters and stuff on here, and then I'll let it dry and I'll come back and go ahead and put the layout together. All right, now I'm ready to just start building the rest of the layout. I went ahead and I matted my two photos on the purple. It's like it had moons and little half moons on it, and so I just matted them on that, and I'm popped them up on some foam adhesive. So I'm going to go ahead and glue those down. I'm not going to overlap them any more than that. I also went ahead while things were drying, have a kitty in the way, I added some foam adhesive to some of the things that I was planning on using. I added the foam adhesive to a couple of phrases, and I'm going to pull off that title piece for the sticker. This is a chipboard piece, the camera. She put a camera on her layout, and this collection had quite a few different cameras in it, and so I thought it would be great to go ahead and use that. I am trying to stick with the same colors in the inking area like she did with hers, just kind of matching up the colors as much as possible. It's not quite as easy as it could have been, because if I'd used the same collection, I could have just copied her layout exactly. But I kind of like putting my own spin on my Scraplift sometimes, and so this one is pretty close to hers. I am adding a few of those brads from this collection, from the Simple Stories collection. I popped some of the stickers, and I'm using a lot of the chipboard and stuff, just kind of trying to use as many of the little bits and pieces that I have left over from this collection. This particular brad piece, the enamel, the colored enamel fell off, so I just glued it back together. And I'm just going to try to keep putting the little brads in the same color scheme as the inking that I did. And I think that's about all I do with that piece. And I add some hearts too, and the hearts are actually in a cream texty look, so they aren't, you know, there's not coral on coral there. I decided I wanted to go ahead and tuck in this piece underneath my photos here. This is just Be You. It does add in colors in areas that I didn't have that color before, but it's okay. I didn't like that there was such a blank space down there, so I wanted to make sure that I added that. And now I'm just still adding some of those little chipboard or foam hearts. I believe they're foam. All right, my layout is completely finished. I just had to glue things down. And then because I cut up the tickets, tags, whatever you want to call those, and some of them had lines, I went ahead and doodled lines in places where you could see that the lines weren't there. I also doodled around the edges like Cassandra did with hers. I added a lot of the little brads from this collection and some of the hearts as well. And otherwise, I'm pretty happy with the way that this turned out. It's not an exact match to her layout, but it's close and I love it, and I'm really pleased with the inspiration that her layout gave me. I want to thank you for coming to my channel today. I really appreciate those of you who have taken the time to like, comment, and or subscribe. If you are new here, I would absolutely love to have you subscribe to my channel. I hope that you, at the very least, will give me a thumbs up, because that helps YouTube know that my content is good, and it changes up the algorithms and all that fun stuff for me to be seen more. Thank you again for being here. I hope that you will check that playlist out below and see what the rest of my Scraplift Crafternoon tribe are doing. You will note that one of our tribe members is only participating as time allows, so the Scrapping Nerd is listed down below as participating when she can. So if she participates, her video will be in the playlist. If not, just check out her channel and give her some love anyway. She's got some great content over there. I hope that you guys have a great rest of your Sunday. Bye.